Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Blumenauer. My name is Michael Wehner, and I'm a staff scientist at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory in California. My current research focuses on the detection and attribution of observed climate change, as well as the projection of future climate change. I'm particularly interested in our topic today, as future climate change is likely to be most vividly experienced through changes in extreme weather events. Can I have the lights on, actually? I don't think we need the slides. I can't see it otherwise. I've been privileged to be a member of the lead author teams of recent federal reports, weather and climate extremes in a changing climate and global climate change impacts in the United States. I've also been selected to be a lead author for the upcoming fifth assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I should make clear that the statements I make today are my own and may not represent the policies or position of the United States Department of Energy, the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory of the University of California. And I thank you for the opportunity to express my views. The fourth assessment report of the IPCC states that the warming of the world's climate is unequivocal. Future warming is virtually certain if greenhouse gas and other man-made pollutants continue to increase at present rates in the atmosphere. The consequences of this will likely be most readily discernible in changes to extreme weather events. I would like to begin by saying a few words about climate change projections, as they are often misunderstood. Credible projections of anything take into account all available information. In our case, this consists of the observed climate change, insights based on physical understanding of the climate system, computer models of the Earth's climate system, and assumptions about the future composition of the atmosphere. Expert judgment must then be called upon to synthesize this information into credible projections of the future climate. The computer modeling part of this process is often called into question by those who don't understand. Climate models are indeed far from perfect representations of reality. However, they do contain meaningful information. Expert judgment is used to extract it. As unwise as it is to have a blind faith in climate models, it is equally ill-advised to reject them entirely. My written testimony contains examples of how I expect future extreme weather events to change if greenhouse gas concentrations follow a business-as-usual scenario. I'll briefly summarize these expectations. It is perhaps obvious that as the climate warms, heat waves will become more common. In fact, projections are that future heat waves will be severe for the United States. Extreme heat waves that would be considered rare today will become commonplace. The intensity of future rare heat waves is projected to be unprecedented, with temperatures higher than has ever been seen. I expect that daily high temperature records will continue to be broken at high rates across the United States and much of the world for the foreseeable future. What may not be so obvious is that the future is very likely to be one where both floods and droughts are more severe than in the present. There are good physical reasons why this seeming contradiction must be so, and the climate models reflect them. Intense precipitation events are projected to increase in the United States simply because warmer air can hold more water, as Thomas said. Drought, as measured by the amount of moisture in the soil, is projected to become the normal condition over the continental United States because of large evaporation increases due to warmer temperatures. The effects of global warming on hurricanes and tropical cyclones are under intense scrutiny by many scientists, and much remains to be learned in this exciting field. A consensus view has emerged that intense hurricanes will become more frequent and more severe in a warmer world, as dictated by simple energy considerations. The substantial federal investment in high-performance computing is fostering a rapid development in the study of hurricanes by enabling the finely resolved calculations necessary to simulate these storms. Finally, I find that these projected future changes to extreme weather and climate in a warmer world to be sobering. The costs and impacts of even small increases in the severity of these phenomena can be large, both to our nation as well as to other countries such as Pakistan. These projections can give policy and decision makers an early warning as to what might be, but such a future is not inevitable. Although some changes in extreme weather are already committed to, the ultimate size of these changes depends on the amount of greenhouse gases that are emitted into the atmosphere. Thank you very much.
Has expired. Let me turn and recognize the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, for as much time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, luckily for you, my committee responsibilities take me elsewhere, so I won't be lengthy in my inquiry, but I appreciate the context that's been established by the ambassador. One would think that the tragedy that's occurred in Pakistan would be yet another wake-up call, but it seems that at times people here are not sensitive to what's happening halfway around the world, but maybe some things that are closer to home. So I would like to just follow up very briefly with a couple of the comments from our other witnesses. There was reference to extreme weather events, heat waves, for instance, that um, I'm not certain people understand the impact that that has. We think of the thousands of deaths in Europe, for instance, problems in the Midwest in the last decade. I'm curious if our witnesses could elaborate a little bit by putting some sense of what the impact may be for these ever escalating high temperatures, and perhaps laying to rest the canard that well, climate change might be good for agriculture, because I'm hearing that we're talking about extreme rain at the same time we're having change in the moisture composition of the soil, which sounds like it's bad for agriculture. So I wonder if our witnesses could give a little, briefly give some dimension to the seriousness of these that people might be facing here in the United States that might get their attention if the events in Pakistan didn't.
Yeah, but go ahead.
In my written testimony, I have some numbers for this. In the first figure, I show how frequent an event, that a heat wave that we consider to be likely to happen once every 20 years, if in a business as usual greenhouse gas emissions scenario, that what we consider once in 20 years now would be every other year. And so hence that's the root of the rare event becoming commonplace. And so there certainly would see adaptation of that. If you have 2 severe years in a row, the second time isn't as bad. You know, the people that were going to die the first time already did. And it's as harsh as that reality, I think. But the rare events predicted at the end of the century under this scenario would be as much as 11 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than they would otherwise be. And so that's a lot. And I'm not a human health expert, but I think it's fairly obvious that could be very dangerous.
Well, I guess my concern is maybe you kill off some of the weak and the vulnerable among us with the first event when they come every other year, every third year. But what I also heard in your testimony is that the extremes are going to get worse, the temperatures get higher. When we're talking about increases in the highest of 5 or 10 degrees Fahrenheit, it strikes me that that has dimensions that we are going to have a great deal of difficulty contending with, like even our capacity to be able to provide cooling, for instance, on an overstressed grid, or extreme weather events could interact in terms of posing problems with actually the supply of energy itself. Mr. Chairman, I'm still sort of processing this, but it sounds to me unnerving in terms of how this scales up in a way that we're not quite, I think, able to comprehend at this point.
I would add that one of the things that frightens me the most is that the projections are for such a level for the average, but the extremes are actually higher. And so I expect that the extreme heat waves will change at a greater rate than the average climate.
Just, I've got a 2-year-old grandson who is going to be living in a very different world, I think, than I grew up in. And some of the things I enjoyed, which is salmon in the rivers, snow in the mountains in the state of Washington, I think aren't going to be there in 100 years during his lifetime. I just want to ask you, and yet there are people, many people in our country, who do not feel compelled to say we should do something about this or even recognize there's a problem. And given the extent of the science on this, that's very difficult for me to understand, given how clear the science is in this regard. Could you just tell us, each of you, if you were to run into someone at a party and they said, you know, I was listening to one of my favorite TV channels and one of my favorite talkathon people, and they said this is just kind of a plot, that this is not really science, and I don't believe that there's global warming or global disruption as a result of human activity. And you had, 60 seconds with them. What would you tell that person?
I've been asked that very question by another parent at my daughter's school, and And my first response was to her, I said, well, why would I make this stuff up? And I don't think that convinced her. And I would agree with Dr. Peterson in that the compelling evidence is that we look at so many different things, and there's a consistent story here. But I also might appeal to the first part of this committee's name, which is energy independence. It's not just about global warming. The nation has other compelling problems, one of which is its reliance on foreign sources of energy. And so it's not an either or.
Can I close with one comment in that regard? In 2000, there were 5 major solar manufacturing companies in the United States, and there were 5 in China. That was in 2000. In 2009, there are still 5 major solar manufacturing companies in the United States, and there are 528 in China. I appreciate your work. Thank you.
What I'm wondering is, from our expert witnesses, are there any questions of the ambassador about Pakistan or about what they're doing that any of you might have for him, that he might be able to answer for you at this time? Sure.
I have a question I should probably know the answer to, but I don't, and so I'm going to afford this opportunity to ask it. How much is Pakistan dependent on snowmelt from the Himalayas for water, or is it all monsoon?
I will not be able to give you a scientific and accurate answer. Being a diplomat, I'm not always up to date on numbers like that, but my understanding is that a significant part of our sort of water flows comes from snowmelt, and the monsoons are only only part. And I have a number here, just give me a second and I'll find it for you. Yes, we actually depend on about 154 million acre-feet of water from snowmelt. So that is basically more than half of the waters that come through our rivers are essentially snowmelt and not monsoon dependent.
The reason I ask is that this means that we share a common problem. In the western United States, most of the water supply comes from snowmelt. And as the climate warms, the timing and pattern of that melt will change, and the systems that are in place to distribute the water will be inadequate. And so, in that sense, we share a common problem.
Had a disruption in the snowmelt patterns in the last few years. That is something that our scientists are studying, as to how much of it is because of unprecedented human activity in the glaciers, the warming factor, and all of that is under study, because we've had a couple of years in which the snowmelt patterns have been sort of totally in the opposite direction. So it's something that requires more study, and it's one of the subjects that climatologists in India and Pakistan are studying together.
Now, the ambassador has to leave, and here's what I would ask then, before you leave, Mr. Ambassador, if you would indulge us. I would like to conclude the hearing by having each one of our witnesses give us the 1 minute that you want us to remember out of this hearing. And Mr. Inslee's already asked a similar question, and then wind up with the ambassador, making his final presentation to us. That your testimony has been invaluable today. By the way, there's been no other hearing like this on Capitol Hill since the beginning of the Pakistani floods. I mean, the ambassador comes up to talk to individual members, but I think that's why we have the Select Committee on Energy Independence and Global Warming, so we can have the public discussions and briefings that are televised and that can be seen and heard and reported upon across the country. That's why we have the Select Committee. Doctor, if we could begin with you.
What I'm going to bring.
If you hold for just 10 seconds. Thank you. Please, Doctor.
What I'm personally going to bring home most from this are the images of the suffering in Pakistan. Scientists often are locked in our offices, and we tend to be theoretical. And those images are astonishing, painful, and and bring a reality to my work that that I didn't appreciate before I got here. And I thank you for that, and my condolences to the people of Pakistan.